that number up on the top where it says additional costs at 581,000 would have been much, much greater. And then we would have had to change all of these numbers around much, much more. So we didn't want to be real there. But we want to be real when it comes to overtime budgets. We want to be real when it comes to overtime budgets, but we didn't want to be real when it came to health insurance. We don't want to be real and put in the amount of levy that it ultimately, and I say ultimately because it isn't, it's a transfer, but to Chris Jensen, we're not going to talk about how much money it's going to cost to keep, in property tax dollars ultimately, to keep Chris Jensen open. We don't have that in here either. We're not going to talk about the fact that we subsidize food, beverage, and lodging next year for $60,000. You know, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about, when we talk about the out-of-home placement, and we had a $30,000 figure there, we have no control over that. We virtually have no control over it. So let's just take, you know, as long as we're going to do voodoo economics, because that's apparently what I see happening here, as long as we're going to do voodoo economics, let's take the number, whatever it is that we need, and we'll just take it out of home placement. We're going to spend it anyway, but we'll just take it out of there, because that's the way this board is doing things right now. That's what I'm seeing, is that you just need a number. Well, just say, well, we're not going to spend this much money in out-of-home placements, so we're going to save it. Whatever the number is, and you're done for the day. You can all go home.
Sure. Steve.
Okay, I'm ready to say we're done. We're done for the day. I give up on the 34.5, and let's move on.
Take it out of home placements.
No, we won't. We just won't.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
Just leave the position.
Okay, all we need is $8,000 positions there.
So 8,000, you want to just, we have to target anything? Name it, find it?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you know, the idea is to get close. There's a lot of other uncertainty out there. This is a $330 million budget. $8,000 gets lost in pocket.
It's pocket lint, is that what you
It
like
gets lost
that?
in pocket list.
Okay, then we're going to have a balanced budget. The other items to consider is those management comp recommendations, whether or not those will be a part of the budget.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we had a small amount of money kind of set aside for these, depending on what the results were. This is the study that we've been working on with for department heads since I think the beginning of time, but at least a year and a half. It has come back with a recommendation that the recorder, property management directors are more than 10% below what their salary should be. It's been board policy, I understand, from civil service going back forever, that it's got to be at least a 10% gap before there's consideration. That's going to come up in a second as far as elected officials go. So the recommendation back from civil service is that the recorder and the property management director are more than 10% out of alignment. Therefore, they should receive an adjustment to bring them to the range midpoint. That's about $9,000 for each of them. They also reviewed the elected officials at the request of two board levels. This is the one for which I'm responsible, is the recorder and the property management director. There's a separate board letter for elected officials. The civil service, at their request, civil service did the same process with elected officials as they had done with the department heads. Their conclusion was that one elected official, the sheriff, was more than 10% out of alignment, so therefore the sheriff should receive a reduction, or an increase rather, of $5,196 to step up in the plan. They found at the same time that the attorney was 7% below or above. The midpoint was 7% higher than the attorney's salary, put it that way. She has asked that you consider that, and that is also mentioned in the board letter, whether there should be an adjustment at that point. There was not a recommendation of civil service that that be included, and because again, these are elected officials, I have no position on this whatsoever. So those are the three adjustments that came out of civil service. with the potential for a fourth adjustment should you wish to make that for the
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, on the sheriffs, do those elected officials, okay,
Go ahead.
you want to do something first, Don?
No, after you.
Okay.
Fine.
Do all of those elected officials get like, I don't know what you call it, a merit bump each year? In the first 4 years they're elected, okay? First
No,
9,
That's not correct.
okay, can we have some idea, and if that's the case, was that bump considered for when, and he's still 5,100 a month? Is that same true with Melanie, that bump was considered,
I would,
but she was still 7% low?
in reading the information, I would say that the same considerations were part of the study across the board.
Okay.
They don't look, if I may, they don't look at the individuals, they look at the salary range. So you look at the gap between salary range, midpoint of salary range, midpoint of salary range. So that way you're not comparing somebody who's been in a position for 10 years with somebody that's just started. It's where they would both be at an equivalent level of seniority. So that's how they do the comparison.
Don?
Thank you,
It
Mr.
explains
Chair.
a little more than the board on it.
Just so that the board doesn't feel like, that maybe they might potentially be paying somebody at the market rate. My analysis showed that my salary is under the midpoint by 4.5%. So I'm well within that 10% range, so if you can hear about it, but just don't want you to think that you might be paying somebody at what the market is or a little above the market for elected officials. And my understanding, just to address the issue about the merit levels, my understanding, based on reviewing my salary scale, is that the first 4 years an elected official is that they get a merit increase or a step increase every year. And then in the 4th year, if you get reelected, every year you get reelected, you get a merit step. You get a merit step, but you don't get one every year. Just every time you get reelected. So it's a little different for elected officials than regular management level person.
Yeah, the regular department heads, as opposed to elected, not irregular, but as opposed to elected. The regular department heads, such as the property manager and the county recorder, receive 4 annual steps that Don mentions, and then 5 merit steps, and they are annual. And so there are 9 annual steps for the regular department heads.
So elected officials lag your department heads in that sense.
And for our viewing audience, county commissioners, elected officials are not on that basis. And never, ever get longevity or merit steps, whether you work 60 or 80 hours a week.
Don't I get more for 100?
So,
Mr. Chair?
Mike,
Just one comment is that and this includes all elected officials, is that if money is the reason that you're running, why is there so much competition all the time to get out there among some pretty qualified people that have been elected in this county? And I'll say that from sheriff auditor to you name it, the attorneys that we've had, and commissioners that we have. There's competition out there, the pay can't be that terrible. I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, I'll be first to admit that I make a lot more money on my part-time job at the mine than I do as a commissioner. But at the same time, I'm not complaining about it one little bit, nor will I complain about it.
Dana, should we be giving some direction on either the elected or appointed positions for inclusion in the budget document?
Mr. Chairman, they're separate board letters.
That wasn't a question.
Do you need to do it in the budget itself?
Yeah.
I would say not. That we had some additional funding in 299 in the compensation section to cover whatever outcome might be. There's been a request that it be retroactive, and there's funding in it's an account in administration where we have compensation costs set aside. Most of what's happening here today will go back into that account because that's what we pay in salary settlement is, health insurance